What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Homebound to Eretz Yisrael. Today, we have possibly one of the most important videos that we have ever made for you guys. We just recently, this past Tisha B'Av, we released a video called Beyond the Wall, touching on the topic of the Har HaBayit. Inevitably, it sent waves throughout Klal Yisrael. A lot of people have questions. A lot of people want to know more. A lot of people are confused, and that's okay. And that's what we're doing here at Homebound. We are going to bring you the Torah, the Geulah Torah that every Jew needs to know about in order for us to usher in the period of redemption, in order for us to build the Beis HaMikdash and sanctify the great and holy name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So today we're going to address some of the questions, some of the concerns that many of you had on the film we released. So please, guys, stay tuned. We're going to hop into a podcast. We're going to talk about some really important things. You guys are going to love this. Let's go. What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Homebound to Eretz Yisrael. We are here today, joined by our very special guest, which most of you probably know at this point. If you've been keeping up with the channel, we have Rabbi Yehudah Levi, a good friend of mine. We've been doing a lot of work together, Baruch Hashem, trying to bring Geulah Torah to Klal Yisrael. Now, after our release of our film on Tisha B'Av, Beyond the Wall, if you haven't seen it already, I would urge you to go check it out. It might change your life. It's already changed many other people's lives. Mostly for good. We hope. Absolutely for good. Some people need to catch up a little bit. Anyway, if you want to see a really unbelievable film, Beyond the Wall, check it out. We released it, the video right before this one. It was on Tisha B'Av, where we go through the halachos and the concepts and the reasons why Jews should be going up to the Har HaBayit, coming to Eretz Yisrael. Obviously, that's step one, coming to Eretz Yisrael. But it's called Beyond the Wall because maybe, you can go ahead, say hello to the kotel, but really beyond the kotel, behind the wall, is really the place that Jews are supposed to be going. Because if you don't go to that, so you can't build a Beis HaMikdash in the kotel plaza. You got to go to the other side. Now, after releasing that film, obviously we got a lot of emails, a lot of messages, as we expected. This is still a little bit of a new phenomenon in Klal Yisrael, a little bit of an untouched subject, unfortunately. But
not new, but forgotten.
Right, a new subject in modern day, I guess, to be learned. Yeah, and that's why we're here. That's why you're here, Yehudah. You're the expert in this, and
I'm not an expert, but I try.
I mean. You can call yourself an expert based off of your knowledge on it, or you can call yourself an expert based off of the ignorance of everyone else around you. So go whichever. No, this is not a bad thing. I mean, again, till I, this is a.
I thank Hashem that I had the schus of spending well over 7 years researching this lovely topic.
Amazing. So, as we expected from the film, we knew that we were going to get a lot of messages, and before we even made the film, we were talking about, after the film, we're going to have to address some things, and that's the goal. We want to teach people Torah. People have questions. Obviously, there's some hate mail coming in. Apparently, we're like apikarsim for like discussing Torah, but I'm not sure how that works out. But Baruch Hashem, 95% at least of my mail emails and messages have been positive. People asking questions, sincere questions, trying to figure out more, and we don't have too much time because you're limited, but I want to just go through some of the main concerns. Well, it's really one. One is, we'll.
Sorry about my Hatzalah member.
Yehudah is a life-saving Hatzalah member. So forgive his walkie-talkie if it goes off at all. Okay, so I think Beis Hashem we're going to make a number of videos, really addressing some of the things. Maybe we'll go through some of the comments. I'm going to probably make some of my own videos. I'm not sure how many times you're going to come out here. But the one main topic that I want to start with today, and then we'll see what else we can get hold of. I have some points here, but we'll just start like this. Let's hear your points, and then I'll go through mine. Everyone has the big question, with Eretz Yisrael. On this channel, Homebound to Eretz Yisrael, we talk a lot about the importance of living in Eretz Yisrael. So there's arguments and discussions, I guess, to be had. Overall, the full stop argument that everyone always has to fall onto is, if it's so important, why don't the Rabbanim talk about it more? That's their talking. That's the point about Eretz Yisrael. But it's a lot easier to get past that because everyone understands that Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah in the Torah. It's an important thing. You need to be here. It's our land. Even secular Jews understand this. So fine. But people have the same argument when it comes to Har HaBayit, going up to the Temple Mount. but in a much more extreme way. It's not why aren't rabbis talking about this. It's even much more. People will immediately start saying, why is it that all the big gedolim, whoever they may be, usually people are throwing out names like Rabbi Yashiv, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Rav Avad Yosef, and the like, right? The big names of the modern day. Why do they, not only they don't talk about it, they say it's usher. They say it's usher. So like, again, like we discussed a bit in the film, there's a very big gap between giant mitzvah must be done in order to bring the Geulah and completely usher, if you go, God will kill you. I mean, literally the biggest gap. So, Yehudah, Rav Yehudah, please address this a little bit. What are some of your talking points on this?
I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Gedolim, the ones that you've quoted, have said otherwise. They have very clearly written that it's usher to go. When it comes to Klalei Halacha and Psak Halacha, already from the Chasimis the Talmud, Reb Shri Gaon writes that there's no longer an ability for Rabbanim to create a Gezerah. Meaning the ability for Chazal to create Gezerah, such as Muksa, such as not blowing Shofar on Shabbos. That existed only for the Chachmei HaTalmud. And once Chazal, the Chasimis HaTalmud, was finished, there no longer is the ability for Rabbanim to come together and paskin a Gezerah. It's debatable whether if we were to create a Sanhedrin today...
Yeah, what's the source for this exactly?
This is Reb Shri Gaon.
Okay.
And this is well accepted in halachic psak. So those who any person who spent any time learning halacha, going through a smicha program, will know this. This is not controversial.
Yeah, I'm just going to cut you off in a few points because I'm just going to address the things that I'm sure people are thinking. There's also is probably an immense amount of nuance here, as like
of course
the Chachamim making Chazal making an enactment that we literally skip the mitzvah of, let's say, blowing shofar due to the fact that we don't want somebody making a mistake on Shabbos and carrying. But now modern day poskim do still they do have the right to paskin. And they do have, so like...
But they're pasking, so let's clarify this. And Ramesha has a whole tshuva on this, and it's actually really fascinating tshuva to go through. I think Rabbi Aaron Sokol actually in his video recently quoted the same tshuva as well. That Rabbanim today have... people. Let's take a step back. Let's take a step back because I think that we need to put everything into context. And nuance is very hard to put everything into context, but we'll do our best. The way halacha is paskind comes from psukim, Gemaras, and then through the Gaonim, Rishonim, Achronim, down to modern day contemporary Rabbanim. Now, the general rule is that people, each generation cannot argue on previous generations once that group of time has passed. So, for example, Achronim can override Rishonim. Rishonim can override Gaonim. Gaonim can override Tanoim. Amoraim. Amoraim can override Tanoim, and so on and so forth. Meaning the Tanoim had a specific ability based on the way they were learning. They were called Tanoim because they were the ones who were teaching. Amoraim were the ones who said over because they were taking the words of the Tanoim and expounding on them further, but no longer had the ability to override a Tana. We find this throughout Gemara, right? People in the Gemara ask, how could Amira X override a Tana? And the Gemara then explains, he has another Tana that he's going with. So to clarify, when there's a machlekes between two Tanaim, and the ideal way halacha is supposed to be paskin was with the Sanhedrin, meaning there would be a shayla, can you eat rice on Pesach? Right? Lahavdol, that's a very famous shayla that we all have. Ashkenazim don't eat rice on Pesach, they're makbid on kitnius. Svardim, or at least some Svardim, eat rice on Pesach. So how is it possible? What's the halacha? There should be the Torah says Torah achas yelachem v'lager lezacha aretz. So how is it possible that there's two different halachas within Am Yisrael? So what happened was that the Sanhedrin would take a question like that, a question that would come in to the Sanhedrin: can we eat rice on Pesach? We don't have clarity. What's the right way to go? So the question was presented to the Sanhedrin, and they would sit in the Lishkas HaGazis on Har HaBayit, which is why the pasuk of Kimitzi and Teitzei Torah Udvar Hashem Yerushalayim is written about. It's referring to this. The Sanhedrin Geulah was what was Kevei Halacha through all of Am Yisrael. And it would take maybe a week or two or three, or depending on the topic, to research. All of the 72 Rabbanim will learn the topic by themselves, come up with clarity, and it came the day to vote. And they would all sit around in Lishkas HaGazis, and the speaker of the Sanhedrin would get up, and then the lowest ranking member of the Sanhedrin would get up to speak first. And it's very critical that it was the lowest ranking member, because if the highest ranking member would speak first, then everybody would just fall in line with this psak. And we don't want that. We want to have clarity from the Rabbanim of the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin is wide, is very encompassing, and is representing all of Am Yisrael. The lowest ranking member would give a 5-10 minute discourse about why he held the halacha was that you can't eat rice on Pesach. And then we go to the second lowest ranking member, and he would give a whole discourse about why he held that it's also to eat rice on Pesach, and so on and so forth, until they came to the head of the Sanhedrin. And the head of the Sanhedrin would get up and say his whole mimer about why he held that it's also to eat rice on Pesach. And then they would tally the votes, right? And they would tally the votes, and the majority would rule that it's mutter to eat rice on Pesach. So even though the Rosh of the Sanhedrin held it was Aser, if the majority held that it was mutter, the psak halacha for all of Am Yisrael was that rice is now mutter to eat on Pesach. This is a whole masechta called holiest, which discusses this entire process.
Meaning, even if the Gadol Hados,
even if the Gadol Hador, the highest ranking member, even Moshe Rabbeinu himself said no. If the Sanhedrin as a body, meaning the Roiv, Achari Rabim Lahatis, they paskin that the halacha is that you can't eat rice on Pesach. I'm just using this as a dogma, obviously.
Right.
Something that's not controversial, or at least we hope not. If they paskin that it's mutter to eat rice on Pesach, that would become the halacha for all of Am Yisrael. And any of the Rabbanim of the Sanhedrin who would hold differently and act differently would be considered a Zakin Mamre, and he was Bichayev Misa. Okay, the pasuk of Loisasar, right? Loisasar, the heilige mitzvah that is constantly bandied about as a mitzvah to listen to the Chachamim, is actually only a mitzvah to listen to the Sanhedrin HaGedolah.
Right. This is, I think, something that people mix up. People are constantly quoting halachas that pertain to the Sanhedrin, and they apply it to the Rav of their shul. No offense to the Rav of the shul, but it's extremely important. There's also people even quote halachas that have to do with a navi. And you have to understand that the Rav of your local shul, or even Rav Chaim Kanievsky, he's not a Navi. He's not on the Sanhedrin. And this is something that people struggle with.
Right. So there is a minchas chinuch that suggests, maybe on a derabanan level, that the mitzvah of leisasser would also apply to your Rav, or to the chachamim of the dar. But in end, and I remember when I was going through the sugi of Tchelis, I actually sat with my Rabbi Rav Gershom Meltzer on this. And I brought up all these questions to him. And I thought he was going to tell me, I've always learned in yeshiva that no, the Gedolim, you have to listen to the Gedolim. And he broke it down beautifully, which is sort of what I'm attempting to do here, although I'm not successful to do it on how beautiful he broke it down. But he made it very clear that there's halachas of the Sanhedrin. And in fact, there's a Taisus in Shabbos that says that Moshe Rabbeinu went to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when he was in Shemayim for the 40 days, and he asked him, what's going to happen when there's machlekes? So Hashem said, I baked into the system this very way to answer it, right? Torah lo b'shamayim hi, as we're going to read in a few psukim, in a few parshas, at the end of Sefer Devarim, Torah lo b'shamayim hi. The Chachamim on the world, they are keveh what the halacha is, right? We have the famous Gemara of Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. When it comes to what is kaveh halacha for all of Am Yisrael, only the Sanhedrin has the ability to do that. If there is no Sanhedrin, so then each Rav learns up the sugya for himself and paskins for himself, which is why today we have thousands of shittas on every little detail, because each Rav will learn the sugya. Now, to clarify, you can't be an achrein today, meaning I, Yehudah Levi, can't come in and make up something that is not found in any source. When people bandy around, especially when it comes to the film, there's not a single gadol, not a single Rav that says what you're saying, that's completely false. Everything, we're not saying, new chidushim here. We're not making up new ideas. Everything that we're saying is clearly traced throughout the halachic process, through big rabbanim before us, and just because a person may not be aware of such rabbanim, doesn't mean that they don't exist, and doesn't mean they haven't written extensively on the topic. All right? People are always shocked to hear about how much of the Messiah exists on the fact that the Dome of the Rock is the location of the Eben Shasiah. There's well over 100, close to 200 sources of this. In halachic svarim that everybody and anybody who's learning any sugya would totally use in any other area of halacha. It's mind-boggling to me that people would push away such a Messiah and say that's not what Messiah means, or I don't understand why you think that's not the way Messiah means. When you have Rav acharei Rav, Talmud, Rabbi to Talmud to Talmud to Talmud to Talmud, going through this idea that this is where the Emetz is located. In any other area of halacha, if someone were to suggest that that's not kaveya halachically, he would be called an apikaris and a kaifer. But specifically when it comes to Har HaBayit, and I'm reading the Kaslusa, people just aren't familiar with it, even though we've written extensively about it. There are articles about it on BeisHashem.org. There's videos that we've made, shiurim that have been given in English, in Hebrew. You can find it if you look for it. Such a Messiah exists. But getting back to the Sanhedrin, because I want to finish the thought. The Sanhedrin, when they had the halacha, that was where halacha was paskin from. Once the Sanhedrin was paka, and that was already a couple of years after Chorban Beis Sheni, the Sanhedrin moved, as we know, at the end of Beis Sheni, from the Lishas Agazis to the Itztaba, which is the big building that Hordis built to the south of Har HaBayit, because they didn't want to have the nisayon of trying capital cases. Because the Gemara tells us the Sanhedrin that a bezdin that puts to death one person in 70 years is considered a trigger-happy bezdin, if you will. And there was so much corruption going on at the end of Beis Sheni that the Sanhedrin felt that it was necessary to move out of the Lishas Agazis, because the only place that they could try capital cases was within the Lishas Agazis, and they moved out to the Itztaba. Then Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, in his deal with the Roman general, he was able to save the Sanhedrin to Yavna, and he moved it to Yavna. The Sanhedrin continued in Yavna, and then eventually moved around elsewhere in Yerushalayim, in Eretz Yisrael, until eventually the persecution in Yerushalayim, in Eretz Yisrael, I keep saying Yerushalayim, until the persecution in Eretz Yisrael became so great that right around the 5th, 6th generation of Amoraim, the Sanhedrin had to be shut down completely. Now there was a sister quote-unquote Sanhedrin with the Reish Galusa in Bavel, which is again why Talmud Bavli sort of became the main Talmud that everybody learns, even though in Talmud Bavli it's full of sources about why Talmud Yerushalmi is the superior Talmud, which is the discussions of various halachas. Once the Chasimus Talmud happened, there's no longer an ability to make a gezerah on Am Yisrael. You cannot make a gezerah such as muksa. Muksa is not a halacha d'oraisa. It's a gezerah midrabanan, that we can't touch things that have no use on Shabbos. Because the Chazal were worried that people in Shabbos were coming to use and touch things that weren't useful on Shabbos and end up being Mechal Shabbos. Another gezerah was not blowing shofar on Shabbos. And the Acharonim already and the Rishonim Acharonim already explain how that's possible, because there's a halacha that you can't cancel any sort of halacha fully. Meaning, if there's a mitzvah in the Torah, you cannot get rid of such a mitzvah. So how are you able to stop shofar being blown on Shabbos? And the Taz there explains that really, since Rosh Hashanah is considered Yom HaArichta, and therefore you have Sunday, and therefore you're blowing shofar on Sunday, so you still have mitzvah shofar on Shabbos. So Chazal were able to stop, or to at least take shofar down on when it fell on the first day. However, in Yerushalayim, where there was a bezdin, already from the Mishnah, we know this Mishnah is in Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, they did blow shofar on Shabbos in Yerushalayim when there was a bezdin, and there are minyanim today in Yerushalayim that go with that, and because they have set up a bezdin in Yerushalayim, they blow shofar. Rabbi Yisrael Ariel in Beis HaMikdash, they blow shofar on Shabbos. Rabbi Tzvi Rogan's minyan in the Old City blows shofar on Shabbos. It's very fascinating. But putting that aside, the reason why Chazal were able to do so is because, first of all, they were Chazal, and second of all, they were not being paka a mitzvah legamri. To say today that saying to go off the Har HaBayit for whatever reason is allowed, while it's immediately deactivating 5 mitzvahs Seder Bizman Hazeh, or literally today, but well over a third of the mitzvahs, such as building the Mikdash and everything that's related to that. Hundreds of mitzvahs. Because of a chashash, no area of halacha will we ever suggest such a thing.
Right. Okay. Now, so because the main points you're bringing up is that what I got is that the last point you just said, that even when Chazal, or even when Sanhedrin, even when they went ahead and made some sort of enactment, it was one particular mitzvah, and in a way that they didn't abolish the mitzvah.
They clarified.
This could be the whole Har HaBayit is usher issue is very, very intense. That's number one. Number two is you're saying nowadays people really don't have the power of the Sanhedrin to do this. We learn even from the Sanhedrin. What?
Until they make a Sanhedrin.
Until they make a Sanhedrin. That's also,
The Beis Yosef tried to do it.
Yeah, but...
so if the Beis Yosef was able to do it, the same person who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, there's obviously a way to do it.
Yeah,
obviously.
But if Chaim Kanievsky didn't try to do it, so then it's not doable. That's what the Eilim would say. I'm going to get to this in a minute.
Yes, I didn't answer your Iker question of the Gedolim, but I tried bringing.
Yeah. No, what you're saying is good. So we have some points to work off of, and one of the interesting points that you said is that even though on the Sanhedrin there might be a recognized Gadol who's the biggest of the whole Sanhedrin, you're saying the whole entire Sanhedrin was set up in a way that he speaks last. That way, even though he's recognized by all the other Gedolim on the Sanhedrin as being the biggest, we still want to make sure that his word does not trump everything else. But he knows the most Torah, but that's not how it works. Okay.
Right. I actually heard a really fascinating idea from Rav Yehudah Tursky, who was also on the film, who said it over in the name of his grandfather, Rabbi Abraham J. Tursky, the famous psychiatrist, I hope, psychologist.
Just call him doctor.
Yes, Rabbi Dr. Abraham J. Tursky. He said that the Gemara in Gittin that says that Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas was the cause of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. That's all part of the larger Gemara about Kamsa Bar Kamsa. What happened was that Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, the whole story happened, and then he decided to punish the Jews. So he arranged with the Romans to bring a carbon, and then as he was on his way to bring the carbon, he made a slit in the lip of the lamb, which is a mum, and the question was brought to the Sanhedrin. And Rabbi Zechariah bar Avkulas was the one who said that because it's a mum, we can't bring it. Now, Rabbi Zechariah bar Avkulas was actually worthy to be the head of it was worthy to be the head of the Sanhedrin. But because of his anava, because of his humility, he insisted that he was the lowest ranking member of the Sanhedrin. So what happened was that when the question was brought to the Sanhedrin, he spoke first because he was the lowest ranking member, even though really he was the highest ranking member. And therefore all the other Rabbanim fell in line with him. So because he gamed the system due to his humility, right? The humility is what's causing this. But still, the system is not designed to work that way, and therefore, had he spoken last, maybe other people would have gotten and actually said what they believed, and maybe they would have brought the carbon, because the Sanhedrin could rule that they could bring such a carbon for whatever reason, and therefore, had they ruled that way and they brought the carbon, the whole destruction of the Beis HaMikdash might not have happened.
Wow,
it's by the way a very scary idea, and we have to say it's suggested with humility, but it's. One of the things that modern Judaism has done, l'havdol, is, and we see this a lot by the Hasidim, and again, no, Chas Hashem, we're not judging anybody, we're just pointing out an idea. The idea here is that the Rebbe, or the Rav, or the Gadol, is quasi-infallible. It cannot make mistakes. They have das Torah, and therefore they cannot make mistakes. And therefore, whatever they said is said and done. There's nothing to be done about it.
Klal Yisrael has put the Gedolim on a level that I think would be questionable as to,
Now, without putting out why we started to be knowing that way, throughout the Gemaras and throughout the Psukim and throughout the Navi, we don't see any such idea. In fact, the Navi is constantly being berated of making mistakes. David HaMelech is berated about making mistakes. Am Yisrael is berated about making mistakes. Shlomo HaMelech is berated about making mistakes. Moshe Rabbeinu, El Hashem, right? He made a mistake and wasn't allowed to go into Eretz Yisrael.
The Rambam also, he writes this a number of times. Like he goes back on what he says. He says, I learned new stuff.
Yeah. Human beings are fallible. That's just who we are. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the system knowing that we're fallible and knowing that we'll make mistakes, which is why there's such a concept of a carbon par helam dover, for when the Sanhedrin makes mistakes.
Okay, so I got everything you're saying is spot on. And I think there's a lot to talk about on this subject. But I want to just address the elephant in the room. Okay, I don't know if you know what it is. It's this is the standard impossible question to answer, but I got to pose it because this is what every single person is going to ask and is thinking. The famous words: "You think the Gedolim don't know what you know?" How could Rav Chaim? I don't know if Rav Chaim said it's also, but I know people sent around a video of Rav Elyashiv. The people quote, I think Rav Avad Yosef wrote it down. I'm sure there's others. They say it's usher. It's usher to go on the Har HaBayit. If they know because of course, as we all know, anything that you can possibly know, Rav Chaim Kanievsky knows. That's the word on the street. He's an all-knowing person. In which case, anything you can come up with, he knows. Because we also know, we're going to get into that next, this idea that it's actually not also to go into the Har HaBayit. They had reasons why they felt they should forbid Jews nowadays, at the current moment, at certain times, certain people not to go into the Har HaBayit. It's impossible. Obviously, any person who says the words, it's also to go in the Har HaBayit, without clarifying it, either they assume, if they're a big person, they probably assume that people understand it. Obviously, it doesn't mean it's halachically also. Or if somebody actually believes that they have the right to say it's usher, they're wrong. There's something they don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Without triggering anyone too much. But if all that's the case, how can any gadol ever have said the words, it's usher to go on the Har HaBayit, knowing all these things there? They have no right to forbid something. They're not on the Sanhedrin. It's not usher to go. People now are running around. You have literally hundreds of thousands of Jews deeply believing that someone texted me just last night. He didn't even watch the video. He saw a picture I posted on my WhatsApp status of me and my kids on the Har HaBayit. He totally, this guy missed the boat. He didn't see the video. He just sends me a text. He said, by the way, just want to warn you, it's completely usher to go on the Har HaBayit. I said, why? He said, if you go onto the Har HaBayit, you are chayav karis, period. So I sent him like an article. And anyway, he has some research he has to do now. He hasn't answered me back. But
I doubt he will.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But I'm saying this is mamish the feeling of Klal Yisrael. It is also to go on. So how
people
could
have been conditioned? That's for sure.
How could a Rav say this when he'd be misleading Klal Yisrael at such a level?
I want to suggest. First of all, I want to go back to what I was saying from Moshiach. Moshiach writes that when a Rav is writing today, because they're not a Sanhedrin, they have no right to paskin for future generations. They can only paskin for their specific time based on the information in front of them. Okay. So therefore,
but even the word time again, right? Just time, nitpicking. What does time mean?
Time means when they live.
Mamish today, or when they live. We live at a time that people alive today went from seeing that Eretz Yisrael was not a Jewish state, was overrun by Arabs, to the Tikkufa we're in right now. So obviously, it's a pretty big time.
You quoted the Rambam before, right? The Rambam said, new information came up, and therefore I changed my psak. It's the same. It's true with the Ramban. The Ramban originally wrote, in my opinion, rightfully so, that Kever Rachel is north of Yerushalayim. When he came to Eretz Yisrael and he was shown the Messiah of where Kever Rachel is south of Yerushalayim, he changed his opinion. In my understanding, and I know this is a big debate amongst the various different tour guides and Rabbonim, it seems that the Ramban's original cheshbon is correct based on the way I understand the psukim. But that doesn't have a practical nafkamina l'maisa either way. Just the point is
there's also the famous lice question.
Yeah.
Do they have babies? Do they have eggs? Right. Spontaneous?
Spontaneous generation. All the various things that were known to them. Chazal were only using the science that they had available to them, and therefore they are not infallible. They paskin based on what they knew, and that's totally fine. But
Jews nowadays have convinced. I don't know even if it's a recent thing, but Jews have convinced themselves that no, it's
if it's written in the Gemara,
everything is divine. If a gadol says something, it has to be divine.
Well,
it has to be.
So it's not divine, and the Torah itself says it's not divine. So we're going to go with the Torah over that idea. In general,
and I just want to clarify. I'm sorry to cut you off. There's just important things. Just that idea that people say, like, if even Rav Chaim Kanievsky, he because he was the gadol for Klal Yisrael in his days, like Hashem wouldn't have made him make a mistake. But
our Gemara,
but that would put him on the same level as a Navi.
Right, of course not. The Gemara does suggest that that it can't be that certain Rabbanim would make mistakes, and Hashem arranges things for it. But we also find that the Meraglim were the Gedolei Hadar. And the Gemara and the Pesukim tell us all the time about how they made a great mistake. So you can't have it both ways. Clearly, the Agadah Gemara is talking about different Rabbanim, different Chachamim that had special siyata d'shvai not to make mistakes. So Baruch Hashem for them. Hashem saved them in that moment. But that doesn't mean that a person doesn't have bechira, and doesn't mean that a person can't make mistakes. And we have a whole system of Masechtas Hariyas where people can make mistakes. And we're talking about the Melech, we're talking about the Navi, we're talking about the Sanhedrin. The greatest minds in Am Yisrael can make mistakes, and they have a way to atone for such mistakes, right? There's a whole concept of Egla Rufa, right? There's so much in the Torah about people making mistakes and how to fix it. Human beings are flawed. We're created as such, right? And therefore, our job is to elevate ourselves, to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to make ourselves to as best as we can. The Gemara tells us only 7 people died without any Averis.
Yeah.
That's it. So that means the overwhelming majority of the billions of people that existed since Adam Rishon, make mistakes, make averis, and have to do some form of tshuva to fix that.
Right. So our viewers in Tom's River in Lakewood right now, they're watching and they're saying, look at these two young schnooks saying the Geulah make mistake. Okay, back
but why
to
don't you ask the Geulah himself if they make mistakes? They'll be the first one to tell you that they make mistakes.
If
Rav Asher Weiss, I've had Baruch Hashem, I had this chus of learning under Rav Asher Weiss for 5 years when I was by Rabbi Kalman's Geulah. Rav Asher Weiss would come in twice a week, and once every 2 weeks, and give his shir. And we had this chus of doing shemesh by him, and he used to say this all the time. All the ideas that I'm saying to you now, I've heard from him. He said over that shichra starts the second you close the Gemara. The second you close the Sefer, that's when you start to forget. Yeah. Therefore, you constantly have to chazer. And people make mistakes, and they write wrong things. Big Rabbanim, Chachamim, make mistakes. This doesn't make them less in our mind. Yeah. That makes them human. That makes them incredible people because they took themselves and they made themselves into such a high level. That's amazing.
Knowing
That's
that
incredible.
they can make mistakes, they're still putting it on their shoulders to guide life.
People have to work within what they have. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives everybody what they have, and these amazing people have the ability to do the great work that they do. But back to Rav Moshe Feinstein. Yeah. Once a psak is given for that time, if the reality changes or they don't give a reason for said psak, we in the halachic system do not have to be mityaches. We don't have to deal with what they've written. Okay?
So very important. Kitnius, you think, would fall into such a category? Something like this?
Kitnius is a whole longer sugya.
Okay, we won't get into it.
I have a Rabbanim world that who've quote the Rush that says Kitnius was a minik shtus. I personally don't eat Kitnius on Pesach because my wife doesn't let me. But where I would come out from the sugya is it's a very long topic. I hear both studim.
I was just using it as an example of something that might have been created for a specific time.
So the gezerah of Kitnius was not created for a specific time. It's actually a pella that we...
Oh, I forgot to say, Yehudah, if you can use more English words.
Yes,
I've gotten a lot of requests from people.
I've been trying to translate my yeshivish into here. And I'm also trying to speak slowly because the viewers in my last podcast asked me to speak slower.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who listens to Ben Shapiro on 3 times. So.
3 times speed. Okay, fine. Continue.
But yes, so Kitnius is it was created as a gezerah for all its time. In fact, it's actually a pella that we don't include potatoes and other new foods that weren't around at the time because there's not a person I know who doesn't eat potatoes on Pesach. Quinoa,
yes. I'm saying they threw in quinoa, corn.
But again, and even that is not. There's debatable. You have Rabbi Asher Weiss and you have Rav Moshe Feinstein. There's so many. You have such a wide ranging thing. So in those areas of halacha, nobody says boo when one Rav says one thing and another Rav says another.
Yeah.
But somehow when it comes to Har HaBayit, anybody who suggests that it's mutter to go to Har HaBayit, great Rabbanim such as Rav Yitzchak Brand, such as Rav Eliezer Rabinovich, such as Rav Shlomo Goren, such as there's a tremendous list of Rabbanim who were for it. Rabbi Saul Ariel, Rav Eliyahu Weber.
Yeah, people immediately the mainstream Jew, Lakewood Jew will immediately say, but they're not the Gedolim. Like again, but Chaim didn't know this, Rav Eliashib didn't know this.
But 1 second, how do
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I understand
because I disagree with everything I'm saying.
And my question to such people is that you demand humility from us about how we discuss this topic, but you don't give that back in return. You have the audacity to suggest, without any prior knowledge or any way to gauge who's a bigger gadol, that those people aren't gedolim. Now maybe they're not your rabbanim, and I can respect that. You follow your rav. But how dare you suggest that someone who was a Adam Gadol to the point where Rabbi Zalman Meltzer felt that he was supposed to be he should marry his granddaughter, Rabbi Aaron Cutler's daughter, right? How dare you suggest that he wasn't a Gadol? You ever see Rabbi Zalman Nechemiah's hesped on Rabbi Shlomo Goren? Understand the giant that he was? And you're just going to push him under the table and not even be mityaches with him, not even deal with him, not even recognize him. You don't have to follow his psak halacha. This is not to suggest that you have a chiv to follow said rav. But they were Rabbanim, and they worked within the halachic system. They followed the same psukim that you follow. They followed the same gemaras that you follow. They went through the sugya, went through Rishonim and Acharonim as well as you did. The same level as your Gedolim did. And they were respected. There are pictures of Rabbi Aaron Cutler and Rav Shlomo Goren in America, right? This is not. They were respected.
Okay, now I want to just clarify again the concept that even the word usher, it cannot mean what so many Jews think it means, because again, as we know, we'll put links in everything. We'll put the source sheets that you sent. You have great source sheets. You have your videos, your breakdowns, your PowerPoints. Going through, what Machane Levi is, what Machane Shchina is, are we chayshish for Tumas Zav, and Tumas Meis can clearly go into Machane Levi, all these things. So okay, we can clarify those things. We can prove. We don't need any rabbi here. We can prove we have Torah, we have Gemara, we have straight Torah. We can easily prove and show halachically that obviously it's not usher. I want to also I want to make this clear to the audience that even the rabbis who say it's so-called usher, just to clarify a few things, just as a man who's been going into the Har HaBayit for a while, a lot of the people that go on the Har HaBayit, you meet people who look very Haredi, very yeshivish, very Hasidish, and you talk to them. Majority of Har Hashem. Well, unfortunately, many Jews many of our fellow Jews believe that someone with a kippah sruga is not on their same religious level. This is obviously something we're going to need. Obviously, I'm saying this is what unfortunately, I just say things as they are. This is what many Jews believe. And that's something that's going to need to be fixed if we want to see if they want to be involved in the Geulah. Put it that way. Sinas
chinam means baseless hatred. There's no reason for it.
Absolutely right. People accuse, like me in my videos, of having baseless hatred because I say how people in America are doing the wrong thing by not coming to Eretz Yisrael. So that's sinas chinam. That's not sinas chinam. That's avas Yisrael. Because I want them to come to Eretz Yisrael, because I want them to experience the Geulah the way I'm experiencing it, because I love my fellow Jew. Thinking that a rabbi with a kippah sruga is less of a rav than your rav, because in your circle, kippah srugas mean a certain thing, that is absolutely sinas chinam. And I assume that's something that you were about to say. I just want to say it very strong, because this is something I'm extremely passionate about. I just wanted to say it with the oomph that Homebound deserves. Because that's something that you could drive a healthy Jewish man mad, or woman. Okay. So you talk to a lot of people that go on the Har HaBayit. You've pointed out people that go on the Har HaBayit and they spoke it over and got a psak that it's mutter to go from Rebbe Yashiv.
Yes.
Correct and correct. Okay, correct. Rav Moshe Feinstein gave a psak that...
Correct.
To certain people asked. That it's mutter to go on the Har HaBayit.
Well, he actually wrote a tshuva that it's mutter to go on the Har HaBayit. Just, it wasn't the accusation that I've heard from Rabbanim against that is that, Rav Moshe was just talking theoretical. I don't understand how you could talk theoretical when you're writing a halachic sefer, right? Obviously, the person writing knows that what he's writing is going to be used halachically.
That's selective Torah. Like there are large groups of Jews who just say the Eim Habanim Smecha, right, written by a gadol who clearly what he wrote was like on a very high level, that he wrote that entire sefer with that many sources, locked up in an attic without any svarim. Like, what do they say? He went crazy. Right? People literally say that. They say he went crazy. He went crazy. That's the only reason he wrote nonsense like that. That mamish, you need to live in Eretz Yisrael.
Was there Sirish Kalisher also crazy? Was there B'Kliva Eger crazy? Was there Sam Sefer crazy? Was the Chavetz Chaim crazy?
You have
to say such a word.
So you have the sefer. What's the sefer written from the students of the Vilna Gaon? Kol HaTorah. Right? So I've heard this a lot. The Kol HaTorah has a lot of very powerful Torah on Eretz Yisrael about the importance of being here. A lot of Geulah Torah, and it was written by Rav Shklov, a student of the Vilna Gaon, and I've literally heard people say to me like, I heard that Rav Shklov, he made it up. He said it in the name of the Vilna Gaon. People. Selective type. Rav Chaim Kanievsky paskin to every single Jew they should live in Eretz Yisrael.
I'll be done l'kavschus that these people have cognitive dissonance and are just
absolutely. That's what I'm saying. It's a cognitive dissonance. It's selective.
But a person has to own up to themselves and recognize that in no other area, in any area of halacha, would they ever suggest such a thing. They would never suggest that Rav Moshe Feinstein, who said that one could make a tea and a kli shlishi on Shabbos, which is a massive kiddush,
right,
went crazy. Chas v'chalila to say such a thing.
Yeah, Moshe Feinstein is known to have gave so many psakim that were questionable.
You can have someone make a tea and a kli shlishi according to Moshe's front row Gan Eden, front row of heaven, because he's making Shabbos better, and you could have someone who makes the same tea and a kli shlishi according to other poskim, Shlomo Zalman and others, is front row Gehenim, straight to hell, because as our Mr. Kabbalah would say, straight to hell, right? Because he's being Mechal Shabbos through Kalei Bishul. Now, yeshivas, you'll have some people make a tiyana kli shlishi and some people not. And nobody will suggest that a person is less than because he's following his Rav, which is exactly the point that I've been saying to you all along. There are Rabbanim here on this side. There are almost...
Right, we'll put the source sheet of the 200
There's
rabbis.
over 200 Rabbanim, Roshi Kahal, Roshi
It's much more than 200,
Yeshivas,
that's just what
obviously.
it is. Yeah.
But I'm saying, and if you go through the sugya from Churban Bayis Sheni till today, the overwhelming majority of Rabbanim and Poskim and Tanoim and Amoraim and Rishonim and Achroinim held that one has a mitzvah to go to Har HaBayit and a chiv to bring karbanos and a chiv to build Beis HaMikdash. So over the last 100 years, that has pivoted. But why would you ever suggest that because you're not familiar with what happened prior to 100 years? So you want to say what happened now after 100 years? What changed?
Yeah? Oh my gosh. How'd you get here?
Over that chair over there. Want to sit over there? No, that's the
No.
that's
Sit right
the
there. Here, come sit over here because we're making a video.
But I'm gonna cross the street.
Okay, mommy will cross. Okay, come.
You take me on.
Okay, so we were saying
This is not the first time this happened. Okay, so
we were saying that
where
like,
were we holding?
we were saying that the Gedolim. Your question was about whether the Gedolim said Asar and why they said it's Asar.
Yeah,
I think it's a
that's
very
a big
important thing to go through what was going on at the time. In 1967, when the paratroopers captured Har HaBayit, they entered into the old city through the Lion's Gate, made an immediate left turn into the Tribe Gate, onto Har HaBayit, capturing Har HaBayit. And once it was captured, they spent not an insignificant time running around the Har trying to find the doorway to get to the Kotel. Finally, I found it, the Mughrabi Gate, which is literally on the opposite end of Har HaBayit. So if you're entering it from the northeast corner, the Tribe Gate, it's on the southwest corner is the Mughrabi Gate. So it's literally on a diagonal line. Once the war was over, for a few weeks until they cleared the other areas, which wasn't cleared until Shavuos, mind you, another way to get to the Kaisel. The only way to get to the Kaisel was through Har HaBayit, through that route, coming in through the Lion's Gate, left turn into the Tribe Gate, onto the platform of the Temple Mount, and walk around until you get to the Mughrabi Gate and down the Mughrabi Gate to the Kotel, to the Western Wall. The Rabbanim were obviously scandalized. People are going onto Har HaBayit without going to mikveh, without preparing. Even worse, people were taking shortcuts and were literally going diagonal, direct line over past the Dome of the Rock.
Right, this had nothing to do with Jews going up to pray
Right.
and going to the mikveh.
They were going to the Kaisel.
They were using it as a road. There was a road
Yes.
literally running across the Har HaBayit, and this was a big
itself
problem.
is a significant lapse of judgment on people's part. Like you literally have the prize and you're avoiding the prize to get
Yeah.
the secondary prize of the Kaisel, which is only special due to its being the outer wall of the Har. But putting that aside, right? And again, we're not judging people. People had the knowledge that they had at the time. The Rabbanim said everybody off the Har. They were very much looking to make sure that everybody off the Har, because people were walking onto the through and near into Machane Shechina. So as Rabbi Ovadia Yosef in his tshuva wrote, and I mean he obviously wrote in his tshuva right away that it's asur to go to Har HaBayit, but in his words in Madanei HaMelech, he's quoted, "Elu shenichnasim lo sholim dat, lo sholim chachma." Those who go in are not consulting wisdom or sage advice. Heim nichnasim b'miskad omer b'fnim. They are entering into the Dome of the Rock. Shehu b'vadai makom ha'echal v'azara. That is certainly the location of the temple and the temple courtyard. So 1 second. What do we see from this verse? He's saying, don't go in because you're certainly entering into that area. Now, he quotes Miskad Omer, which is the Dome of the Rock. Right? That is certainly the area. So nobody could ever suggest that Rabbi Ovadia Yosef didn't know where the Beit HaMikdash, where the temple stood, where the Beis HaMikdash stood on Har HaBayit. It's impossible to suggest this. It's also impossible to suggest that Rabbi Yashiv didn't know. And even though in his tshuva he said we didn't know, and Tzitz Eliezer says the same thing, and the Minchas, and other tshuvas that were written at the time, they, in my opinion, and again this is my opinion, but I've heard this from Rabbeim, that suggest as well that the Rabbanim needed to get people off the Har. So they started their halachic process when they wrote their responses on the topic with that bottom line. And generally, halacha works the opposite. You start off with a clean slate, like we discussed with the Sanhedrin. You start off with a clean slate. You learn the sugya, both sides, and you come out. Bottom line, what you rule halachically. In the case of Har HaBayit, they already knew that they had to come out with the bottom line that you can't go, that it's usher to go. And they use extreme language, similar to it's usher to use smartphones, and it's usher to go to the beach, and all these other isurim that are on pashkavillions that are written with very strong language, in the hope that they will at least prevent certain people from doing it. Their tshuvas were written trying with the goal of to plant doubt in people in what was until that point a very clear sugya, so that people would be machmer and stay off the har, because once people were going to the har, they were entering into the areas that were forbidden, which was the reality in 67. Today that reality doesn't exist. It does exist, but not for those that are going ka'alacha. Let me explain. When a person goes to Har HaBayit today, dressed like a chiloni, dressed like an Arab, dressed like a guy, they will go through security, and then they will go up to the har, and they will be under the guide, the custodianship of the waqf. If they're wearing shorts or not sneeze clothing, the waqf will give them a special skirt to wear for dhimmi status, which is less than Muslim status. And then they are allowed to walk anywhere on the Har HaBayit, including into Machane Shechina. They can't enter into any of the buildings. They can't enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque or the Dome of the Rock or any of the other buildings that are on the Temple Mount. If you go looking even remotely like a Jew with a kippah, you will be forced by the police at the entrance to join one of the religious groups. Those religious groups are guarded by police, and they go through a very specific route that is physically impossible to enter anywhere area within Machane Shechina. Okay? Now, the Rabbanim...
These are Rabbanim, they gave their Asr Psak before this was the reality.
Long before this was the reality. Long before this was the reality.
And everything since then has just been basically
repeating,
an echo chamber.
Like with Rabbi Zechariah ben Abtegas, once he said, everybody falls in line. It's a very similar situation. Once the Big Gedolim said that it's us to go to Har HaBayit, many Rabbanim who know that be'emes it's mutter are afraid to publicly give a psak halakha, and they've told this to me personally. I'm talking about big names that you recognize, that you know, that you would consider a Geulah.
It kind of looked like this with the Amshenever Rebbe, no?
We saw a little bit of that. When the
sounded like he said something that sounded like he said it was permitted, and then he immediately was attacked, and then he immediately took it back. Something along those lines.
And what were the attacks? The attacks were, "How dare you go against the previous generation?" Look at the words.
They pick out a gadol that they like what he says, and then that's it. Nobody can argue on him because that's.
I'm saying, look at the words of the Sephardic chief rabbi railing against Sar Ben Gvir about going, even though his Rav said to go, and he said, "Does his Rav know better than Rabbi Vadia?" And many Rabbanim, when they wrote their general rules based on the realities that existed in 67 and prior in the 30s when Rav Kook originally put out his ban, people were going everywhere onto Har HaBayit, including into Machane Shechina. So, without the capabilities of just building a fence around Machane Shechina, they decided it would be easier to tell people to avoid it completely. Now, there were people at the time who received Piskei Halacha from said Rabbanim to go al pi halacha, or shortly thereafter. This was not meaning the Rabbanim themselves, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, Rabbi Moshe, Rabbi Vadia, Rabbi Eliashiv, all when it came to other Piskei Halacha that were relevant to this topic, all paskin halacha limaisa, like the Vas Messiah, like the Radvaz, like the Chavetz Chaim, like the Pasach Shulchan, like the Bach, like the Shari Tshuva, like the Chida, like the Marit, on and on and on and on and on. You want all the Makaris? Look at the Makar look at the article in Beis Hashem, where I bring all of them in Hebrew and in English, so you could read it and you could decide for yourself. None of this is my own chidushim. I'm not saying anything new here. Everything is well documented. All we're doing is just speaking about what has already been written. As a result, they all pass like that. For example, when it comes to Zaka members going in to remove a dead body from Machane Shechina, the halacha is only a kohen is allowed to remove a dead body from Machane Shechina. Not only a kohen, but better to use a kohen because they have the mitzvah d'oraisa. Now we know a kohen is not allowed to become tamei lames for anybody other than his 7 close relatives. And yet, in this particular case, they're supposed to go into Machane Shechina. Now, if you don't know where Machane Shechina is, you cannot tell a kohen to go in because you have a suffix Machane Shechina. You have a doubt about whether this is the camp of the divine presence, and you cannot allow a priest, a kohen, to go in to that area unless you know for certain that that's the area. Now, Rabbi Yashiv in his Psak Halacha Tezaka wrote very clearly that we hold by the map of Rabbi Chiyah Tukachinsky.
If Machane Shechina is the holiest level, why can't? What's the issue? What are they concerned of?
Because because to go into Machane Shechina as a Tamei Mes is better to.
You're saying because we're sending specifically a kohen.
We're supposed to send the kohen.
You're only allowed to send the kohen in because the dead body is in Machane Shechina.
Exactly. Okay. I mean, Chas v'shalom, it shouldn't happen. The last time it happened was that terror attack with the two.
Again, just to clarify, because a lot of people might not be keeping up.
Yes.
Machane Levia is where
Har HaBayit.
Any Jew can go as long as he went to a mikvah, and because we don't have the paraduma, so whatever. Okay.
No. Machane Levia is mutter for a Tamei Mes. Someone who is Tamei Mes is allowed in Machane Levia, but not allowed in Machane Shechina.
Correct.
Someone who's Tamei Sheyatzim in Aguf, meaning from any of the flows or fluxes that come out of the body, needs to purify first before going into Machane Levia.
Once we have a paraduma, though.
Once we have a paraduma, then you can go into Machane Shechina. But the only way to get rid of Tamas
if we have the paraduma, then you still don't need a paraduma to go into Machane Levia?
Correct.
Okay, fine. So
you only need a paraduma to go into Machane Shechina. Meaning paraduma gets rid of Tamas Mes. Without paraduma, you can't get rid of Tamas Mes. So unless a kohen was born not in a hospital and was makbid to never be in the Tamal Mes, and he knows, and even still it's iffy because you can't always fully know, but at least they have a chance of not being Tamei Mes. Anybody's ever entered into a hospital is becheskas Tamei Mes, and once you're Tamei Mes, you can't get out of Tamas Mes without a paraduma.
Right.
So we cannot go into Machane Shechina unless as part of a military, or as part of maybe Chavi Knesset, because they're going for Ribonut, but that's a whole different sugya, and that's not what we're focusing on. We're not suggesting that people should or shouldn't. There are big Rabbanim that have dealt with the sugya, including Rabbi Yashiv, and including the Rabbanut, and including all the Rabbanim, many who are publicly stated as being anti those going to Har HaBayit. When it comes to this, they have issued their Piskei Halacha, including Rabbi Yashiv about police officers going to the Har. There's a whole thing on Just My Israel status about this, about police officers going to the mikvah, all due to our great efforts of pushing those halachas and teaching those halachas. I remember Elisha really working with police officers there to understand why it was so chashuv and critical for them to go to the mikvah, and Baruch Hashem, people are doing it. It's amazing. But that again highlights this idea that if we don't, that the only way there will be more kedusha on the makom is when those who care about halacha go to the makom and treat it with respect. But to answer the question about why the Gedalim said it was aser, or some Gedalim said it was aser, not all Gedalim. There were many Gedalim at the time, including Rav Sri Dublinsky, including Rav Sion Mitzafi, including Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, originally, who did not want to sign on the Kol Kairei. And some of them said, I can't sign when you said it's usher. You want to say people should avoid going to Har HaBayit, so I can sign on that. But you want to say that it's usher to go, it's not usher to go.
That's really the big talking point. This is what I'm always talking about. Like, if a rabbi wants to give even if he wants to do it for all of Klal Yisrael, a big rav wants to say, it's better not to, because then some people might go bituma, and clarify that, because then otherwise you're left with a terrible, terrible situation, which we are right now, where literally the masses of Klal Yisrael believe that something that is a mitzvah is usher to do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not the first time in history that such a thing has happened. We know, for example, that when Ezra brought the Yidden back to Eretz Yisrael, there were the Yidden there who didn't even know what Yom Kippur was, right? And they were all intermarried, right? The Gemara tells us about Esar Yichsan Elam Yibabel. It's not the first time that people thought that halachas were, in fact, averis, when they were actually mitzvahs. But it's our job to do the best that we can. And the very place that we're going to do it from, as the Nevi'im tell us, is from the Beis HaMikdash, from Har HaBayit. That's the place where people are mischazik and to rebuild these ideas of getting closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Torah. So yeah, obviously, I'm trying to highlight two things. Number one, Rabbanim who publicly say it's aser might say it publicly, but privately they will admit or even give psak halacha for people to go to Har HaBayit. And when asked them, and there's one very big Rav who I got my Psak Halacha to go, and everybody knows his name, and everybody respects him, and thinks he's one of the biggest poskim, and he is. And when I asked him about it, he said, it's a mitzvah for you to go, and it's a big mitzvah, but if you quote me on it, I'll deny that I said that. So I asked him, why? Isn't Torah's emes? He said, I'm not mechuyev to give up everything I've built because people will now no longer take me seriously because they'll say, oh, I'm someone who's matter aliyah Har HaBayit. Which, again, is his right to say such a thing. And I'm not here to judge whether he's doing the right thing or wrong thing. He's obviously a big pasuk and he understands the risks. We saw that in full display with Amshanover and Rabbi Breitowitz when he just suggested the halacha.
Yeah, and none of these people said anyone should go. They just said it's just simply mutter. And that's it. Forget about it. People just... You could say pig is mutter, everyone would be quiet. This, just everyone went crazy.
I would say pig is mutter, but I'm trying to I understand that's an extreme statement, but, right? They weren't suggesting, as far as we suggest, that it's a mitzvah to go. Well, they might have suggested, but they didn't say that in their shirim. They might agree that it's a mitzvah. They were just suggesting that there's a difference between Machane Leviyah and Machane Shechina, and we know where Machane Shechina is. So once you have that knowledge of knowing where Machane Shechina is, so just now you know where Machane Leviyah is. Machane Leviyah is very simple to go in, halachically. Just go to a mikvah and prepare properly. The same way your wife can go to the mikvah and be permitted to her husband, right? Every woman who has a nida, she goes to the mikvah once a month usually, and now she's able to she's mutaras l'bayla. So why would it be different? It's the same preparation process than going to mikvah. It's super simple. It's not difficult to do. So when Rabbanim suggest that it was asur, they may have other reasons. They may have other hashkafic reasons. They may have clouded that or coached that or packaged that in halachic reasons. And they obviously had the reason for what they were doing. And I don't begrudge any Rav who went through the sugya and suggested it. I am suggesting today that many of the Rabbanim who say it's asur go to Har HaBayit are not coming from a place of having deeply learned the sugya by themselves, but rather are just parroting what was already said prior. So if you go to a Rav who's a mumcha in Hilchas Nida, and Hilchas Shabbos, and Hilchas Issa V'Heter, and he leads his kehillah, right? He doesn't, it's not a judgment. It's they will be the first to admit it themselves. They never learned the sugya of Beis HaMikdash and Karbanos. It's not something that they have time to focus on. They may have learned it ancillary, but not on the level where they're willing to paskin on it. And some have. Obviously, the biggest Gedolim, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, wrote extensively about bringing Karbanos, and about Machane Leviyah, and about the great mitzvah to go around to do Hakafas Har HaBayit, as is quoted in Aleinu L'Shavech. People just completely miss that makar, where Reb Chaim is very much clearly saying there's a great inyan and mitzvah to do Hakafa on Har HaBayit. Now maybe he meant that you should do it off the Har, but bring a raya to that. At least Rabbi Zilberstein himself said that that's what he understood from his brother-in-law. But your standard Rav, I've spoken to many Rabbanim. I've heard Rabbanim say in Shiurim, anybody goes as a tamei tumazov onto Har HaBayit is chayv kares. That's against an open pasuk. It's only a tamei meis who enters into Machane Shechina that is chayv kares, and only if he does it b'mezid, not b'shoigig.
So if someone wouldn't go to the mikvah at all and walk into Machane Leviyah,
I would tell him that he's making a big mistake because he's being
according to the Torah,
what he's being over alav. Now
you're saying, but it's not kares.
It's definitely not kares. Now, it doesn't mean you should do it. Nobody should ever break a lav. It's strictly forbidden. But we can all agree logically that there's a difference between a chayav kares and a chayav lav.
Right. This concept that everyone's yelling, you go into the Har HaBayit, your chayav kares is false on so many levels. It doesn't apply to Machane Leviyah. It doesn't apply to Tumas Meis. Not on Machane Leviyah. And I was saying, I also want to highlight, right? Yeah. If Rabbanim in other Piskei Halacha, these Rabbanim who said it was asur, in other Piskei Halacha admit that they know where Machane Shechina is, so that tells us something. That tells us that the original psak of not going to Har HaBayit and saying that it's asur to go to Har HaBayit is not based on a lack of an understanding where the Beis HaMikdash stood. So now it must be ancillary answers, which could either be chumras or other ways to obfuscate the topic to avoid people going up. But if the whole premise of their psak, which was that people are going into Machane Shechina, is no longer relevant, meaning anybody who looks like a frum yid who goes to Har HaBayit, it's physically impossible for you to go into Machane Shechina. You will not be allowed to. Okay? And even those who go up as tourists, if you want to know, just avoid the elevated platform, because the only place that Machane Shechina can be physically is on the elevated platform. As long as you avoid that elevated platform, it is physically impossible for you to enter into Machane Shechina. But these people don't really care about halacha, and they're going into the elevated platform. But to them you have no ire? To them you have no problem?
The Rabbanim are never yelling against those, the tourists and the goyim that are going to Machane Shechina with a chi of misa. Nobody yells about that. It's only against those. It's only against those who go kahalacha and are actually being shomer in the Mishkan and are actually helping people at the entrance who don't know that they need to go. I was standing at the entrance to the Har not long ago, and a tour guide brought in guys who were clearly Jewish, and I made a big announcement in English that one can only go to Har HaBayit if they went to a mikveh prior and have prepared themselves properly and without wearing leather shoes. 2 people there said, I went to a mikveh, and they took off their leather shoes. 4 people of the group said, we didn't go to a mikveh, and they left. The tour guide was fuming at me. He's like, how dare you? I'm like, what do you want from me? I just said something. I don't have to police here. I don't set the rules. But I'm glad I said something. Absolutely. And the only reason why people say something is because we're sitting at the gate. There's no way to get onto Har HaBayit but through where we're sitting. And what would have been had I not been there? So maybe these people could be samech on the Ravid. Okay, let's clarify. We do not paskin like the Ravid. Yeah. We paskin like the Rambam. Kitcher Rishayna, Kitcher Leshaita, Villa Osid Lavoy. It is strictly forbidden for someone with Tumas Zov, which means Nida, Zov, Zava, Yeledis, and Keri, to go into Machane Levia. It is strictly forbidden for a Tamei Mace to enter into Machane Shechina. Full stop. But for someone who doesn't know these halachas and went in, every Rav would say, you have the Ravid to be Saimach on. The Ravid is a tremendous Gayin. We don't paskin like him halachically, but he's a legitimate source. And those, maybe they didn't know that they were being Saimach on the Ravid, but at least we can't punish them. We can't yell at them. We can't say that they were the Chayv Karis, because even, obviously, we are the Shomer Halacha paskin like the Rambam. All the major paskin paskin like the Rambam, such as the Magen Avraham and the Mishnah Berurah. Of course. We would never tell someone, lechatchila, you paskin like Ravid.
And the same Rambam that we paskin like, he himself wrote that he made a Suda every year, celebrating the day that he walked onto the Har HaBayit to daven.
He went to Har HaBayit to daven. He says, "V'nichnasi l'bayis hagadav ha'kodesh v'spalalti blei." And he also writes in Higeres Haramam, he writes, "V'ani v'avimari neshalech beBeis Hashem berogesh," which are two phrases referred to in the Beis HaMikdash. We know he went in 1166, according to our numbers, into Har HaBayit, which was under Crusade rule, major kiddush that he managed to successfully get onto the Har. But he made 2 days of Yom Tov, the day he entered into Eretz Yisrael and the day he went to daven on Har HaBayit. Obviously, in a form of conversation that we were just having, there's so much more I want to say and suggest.
Yeah,
and
we're going to do more
way
of these.
To do
we're
this.
going to have to do more of these.
If all that what we're coming out from this and what we should come out of this conversation, because I didn't have a chance to clarify and really clear up everything that I wanted to suggest and say and bring down. And again, all these ideas are not my own. They're Torah ideas that are well documented within Rabbanim and Gedolim and Rishonim and Achronim and Gemaras, etc. Understand, the same way you demand from us the humility on how we present the sugya, understand that you also need to have the humility to recognize that there's a sugya here. And not everything you think you know is actually bottom line halacha. And you're perfectly well within your rights to not go to Har HaBayit. And that's you. If your Rav tells you not to go to Har HaBayit, I'm the first one to tell you to listen to your Rav. But we could also recognize that there's a sugi behind it. Yeah. And those who are listening to the Rabbanim and going, I know very few people who have gone to Har HaBayit without discussing with big Rabbanim first.
Yeah, I went to my Rav. I went to my Rav, and I actually know a handful of people, well, probably more than a few handfuls of people already since the film, since we released the film, who have reached out to me and said, you got me really curious. The film got me really curious, and I went to my Rav, and I was shocked to hear he said it's mutter. In public they won't do it because if you say something that's controversial in public, then you're thrown off the pedestal. But if you go to these people in private, they're not going to lie to you. They're not going to say something that's against the Torah. They're going to say, yes, you want to know if you can go to Har HaBayit? It's mutter.
You'd be shocked how many Rabbanim. I was shocked and floored when I went to the Gadol that I asked my psak to, as I started speaking to him in private, right, about it. It was a closed door meeting. It was just me and him, and I was floored how much he knew about the sugya. I was expecting him to be like, I'm not really sure. I've had that where I went to Rabbanim and I asked them about certain topics, and they said, well, I don't really know about the topic. I was shocked that he knew about it. But again, it's not really a kiddush because he's a paisik, and he has to know what the realities on the ground are. And he knew so much about the sugya. So there you have it. Just because you think a Rav or a Gadol holds a certain way, until you actually hear it from him, You have no way of knowing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the problem is people aren't asking these questions. They're so fast to state ignorant statements as your chayiv kares for going to the Har HaBayit. I mean, every bit of that statement is untrue. But they don't have the humility to spend a split second looking into the halachas or discussing it with the Rav, or it's
remember,
very
just
sad
think about the people that you know them to be good Torah Yidden. They keep Shabbos, they daven with a minyan, they wear tefillin, right? They send their kids to good schools, right? They're regular, true B'nai Torah. And you see them doing something on the Har, whether it's on the Har or wearing tchilas or anything, maybe bidan them l'kav schus.
Yeah.
And think that maybe they went through the sugya, maybe they asked the Rav, maybe they got a psak halacha to do such a thing.
Yeah.
Why are we so quick to run and suggest that, oy vey, you're going off the derech, and we're not going to be meteches with you anymore, we're not have anything to do with you? Well, you think these people just woke up one day with a chicken cup, with a bug in their head, that all of a sudden they're going to start going and get kares? No. These are responsible B'nai Torah who are learned, who learned to do sugyas, and had shilas, and went to Rabbanim. Nobody that you know and your circles would ever just decide one day to make a decision based on themselves without discussing it with a Meir Derech. So if they're doing that, so why are you immediately being done them shaloi lekavschus? Maybe ask them. Maybe think about that. Maybe they went to their Rav and got a psak halacha.
That's happened with us. I think I don't remember exactly the conversation, but at some point when we became friends, you proposed that I come on the Har. I said, teach me, or Yehudah, teach me. You sat down. We learned Torah. We've been learning Torah together for a while now. Not officially b'chavrusa. We live 45 minutes from each other.
A tkufa where we
tried. We're going to try again, actually.
Yes.
Over the
phone. We're still on.
Yeah, we're still. You send me Torah every day. I'm learning Torah, and we said you over the phone, whatever. I asked you shilas. You gave me the answers. I went to my Rav, I discussed it with him, I opened up some svarim, I went to the sugya to some extent, I continued to discuss with you and some other people who are knowledgeable on the subject. That's what a Jew does. There is a piece of Torah you want to learn about, you learn it. You don't just yell whatever the first thing whatever. Okay. Anyway, Shkayach Rav Yehudah.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll walk you out. All right, guys, so Yehudah Levi had to leave. He had a lot more things he wanted to speak about on the subject. I had a lot more things I wanted to ask and talk about, but maybe we're going to do more of these videos talking about this very unknown, so-called controversial topic of the Har HaBayit. So we're gonna be making more videos, but I just wanted to end off with a couple of points to ponder. All right, number one, a lot of people ask, why don't the mainstream Gedolim say that you should go on the Har HaBayit or that it's permitted to go on the Har HaBayit? Well, think about this. If a rabbi says that it's permitted to go on the Har HaBayit, he immediately loses his status as a mainstream gadol. You have a very similar story happened with Rav Tendler, the son-in-law of Rav Moshe Feinstein. Every time he came from America, he went to the Har HaBayit. There's a lot of videos of him on the Har HaBayit talking about the importance of going on the Har HaBayit, and he was a big person in his own right. Why wasn't he a mainstream gadol? Why wasn't he a big rabbi? Well, by virtue of the fact that he went onto the Har HaBayit, he was not able to become a mainstream rabbi in the ultra-Orthodox world. So when people ask, why don't the mainstream rabbanim say that you're allowed to go on the Har HaBayit? We discussed it in the podcast just now. There are a lot of rabbis who will tell you in private what's permitted, you're allowed to go, this, that. But they won't say it in public, because if they do, they lose their status as being a mainstream rabbi. So it's kind of like a never-ending, circle of hypocrisy, and it doesn't, you got to think about it. Number two, the next thing I want to talk about is the concept of my rabbi is bigger than your rabbi. I can quote my Rav. I can tell you that my Rav, who's a giant Talmid Chacham, he told me it's permitted to go. And so the immediate response is, well, Rabbi Yashiv, you think he didn't know what your rabbi knew, as we spoke about in the podcast. This concept of my rabbi is bigger than your rabbi, it really needs to end. It's very difficult to make progress when instead of bringing sources, instead of bringing Torah, instead of bringing Sfarim and Rishonim and Gemaras, you just say, well, my Rav knows everything. In which case, he's right, your rabbi's wrong, you're wrong, and end of story. We cannot make progress this way. Your rabbi is not bigger than my rabbi. Any person who's a Talmid Chacham, who takes a sugya, who studies it, contemplates it, researches it, has a right to paskin on it and should not be insulted and demeaned just because his face isn't on a picture on your wall. Not every single giant Talmid Chacham and rabbi and posek is a famous name brand rabbi. Some people, They're not a Rav of a Rosh. They're not a Rosh Yeshiva. They're not a Rosh Kollel. There's some people, they just sit in a Beis Medrash and learn Torah. There's some people who work and they still learn Torah constantly, and they're giant Talmidei Chachamim. And just because they're not on your wall doesn't mean they're any less of a rabbi as Rabbi Yashiv or Rav Evad Yosef or any of the rabbis that the mainstream Orthodox Jews consider the Gedolim or the rabbis who have the right to teach Torah and paskin shilas. There's another concept I'd like to mention, and this is something that's probably going to be a little difficult for some people to swallow. There is a difference between a Talmid Chacham who has tons of Torah knowledge and somebody who is a leader. There's some people, they learn Torah, they teach Torah if you ask them, and that's who they are, and that's fantastic. In the mainstream Orthodox world, we like to take people who we consider a big Talmid Chacham, and we like to put them on the pedestal of being the leader. When you look through the Torah, when you look through Tanakh, you'll notice that there were leaders who were not necessarily the biggest tzaddikim or the biggest Talmidei Chachamim. There's a certain quality of a leader. And in the situation we're in now, in the tekufa, in the time we're in right now, where we've begun the Geulah, or we've certainly at least finished with the mainstream Gullus, the mainstream exile. Right now, for sure we need Talmidei Chachamim. For sure we need, as we always did, Jews who can learn and teach Torah on the highest level. But we also need leaders, and not every Talmid Chacham is a leader. Some leaders are people with passion, and of course they themselves, if they're not holding in on the highest levels of Torah, they need to have the same way we had back in the day kings. They had advisors, they had Nevi'im, prophets. Everybody, of course, needs to be guided by the Torah. Either they themselves need to know Torah very well, or they need to be guided by people who know Torah very well. But not every Talmid Chacham is a leader. Sometimes the two are separate. Of course, they need to work together. But this is also something, I'm not telling you who is a leader and who's a Talmid Chacham. I'm just telling you, think about this concept. Just because Rav Chaim Kanievsky was one of the greatest, if not the greatest Talmid Chacham in our generation, it doesn't mean he was the leader of the generation. You can go to him and ask Shilas. You should go to him to learn Torah. But there are people who push things forward, who move the story of the Jewish people forward. And those people aren't always the Gadol Hadar per se. Another concept that we were talking about a little bit during the podcast is we're so busy with being petrified of anything new, of going on to the Har HaBayit, this new concept, this thing that we haven't had in a very long time, hundreds, if not thousands of years. We haven't really had a healthy opportunity to be able to go up onto the Har HaBayit and especially at this point, daven and go freely whenever we want. I mean, almost whenever we want. We're getting there. And instead of being so petrified, it's the same thing with Eretz Yisrael. Instead of being so petrified and running away from it, we use the opportunity to teach people about it. As Rabbi Yehudah Levi said during the podcast, there was a group of not such religious Jews or whatever he said, going up to the Har HaBayit, and he told them, if you didn't go to the mikvah, then you can't go on. You shouldn't be going on. And they didn't go on. That's what we should be doing. We should be using this opportunity. Instead of running away from the Kedusha, run towards the Kedusha. Learn about it. Use it to learn more Torah. Use it to get closer to Hashem. We should be learning about the sugya. We should be learning about. We have had a long time where we really weren't. Klal Yisrael really was not involved in the halachas and the concepts of tumah and tahara. Now it's relevant again. Instead of running away from it and being so petrified of anything that we're not completely used to, how about we use this as a new opportunity to serve Hashem, to add more mitzvos to our list and to our schedules. Now, lastly, I'd like to talk about probably the most important part of everything we've been talking about until now. And that is buried underneath the heaps of kares and usser and forbidden and you're a Russia and all that stuff that people yell about going to the Har HaBayit. Buried underneath all that is the Beis HaMikdash. How can we build the Beis HaMikdash if we're so busy yelling that it's usher to go onto the place where you need to go to build the Beis HaMikdash? It's not rocket science. Klal Yisrael should start using that passion that they have when they yell at people, kares, and it's usher. Use that passion to yell at the other Jews, why aren't you going to the Makom HaMikdash? Why aren't you going to the place and exercising our authority, creating Jewish sovereignty? Why aren't we pushing to fully conquer and establish the Har HaBayit as the Makom HaMikdash and start building the Beis HaMikdash? Why aren't we doing that? Why is it that the vast majority of religious Jews would prefer to yell at one Jew that it's usher to go on the Har HaBayit, and they're not even willing to look up the halachos or delve into the sugya, but they're willing to do that, but they're not willing to look at themselves in the mirror and say, why aren't you yelling to build the Beis HaMikdash? Where's the passion to perform the will of Hashem? Why is all the passion in the hate and the insult? Why is there no passion in the kedusha, in establishing a house for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the place that He told us we have a mitzvah in the Torah of Osli Mikdash? Why aren't we pursuing that with that passion? The same way Jews can now come and live in Eretz Yisrael freely is because there were Jews who came here when it was difficult and created the paths. They drained the swamps. They built up the land. And as more Jews come, we create more sovereignty. We create more jobs, a better economy. We infuse the land with more Torah, and we create the groundwork for even more Jews to come to Eretz Yisrael. We all recognize, and I said this in the Beyond the Wall film, that if Jews didn't come to Eretz Yisrael, then you wouldn't have the option to come live here. You wouldn't have the option to come visit here. You wouldn't have the option to step foot in the land that we've been praying for thousands of years. And the same thing applies to the Har HaBayit. How in the world are we supposed to build the Beis HaMikdash? Even without the Beis HaMikdash, we can create a mizbeach. We can build a mizbeach and bring the Tamid offering. We can bring the carbon Pesach. There's so many mitzvahs we can do. But it all has to begin with Jews going onto the Har HaBayit and exercising our authority, showing the world, showing the Israeli government that we, the God-fearing, Torah-observing Jewish people, demand that the holiest site in the world be given to us and that we can build the Beis HaMikdash, so we can build a Mizbeach. Now, I know many people are going to say, well, why do we need to do any of that? That's foolish. Why get involved in any of that? That's what Moshiach is for. Moshiach will come. He'll build the Beis HaMikdash. He'll bring all the Jewish people here. He'll fight all of our wars. The Moshiach will do everything. We don't need to do anything. Just sit, relax, kick your feet up, do the easy mitzvos. Moshiach will do the rest. So I want to just read to you a couple of sources. We're going to put this source sheet in the description in the video. This source sheet was was put together actually by Rabbi Yehudah Levi. He's a Talmud Chacham, and he put together a beautiful source sheet. I'll read it in English so everyone can understand. The Rambam, in Hilchas Beit HaBechira, it is a positive mitzvah to build the Beis HaMikdash, and everyone is obligated to build and assist personally and financially men and women in building the Beis HaMikdash. The Minchas Chinuch, mitzvah number 95, according to him, there is a mitzvah, deraisa, a positive mitzvah to build the Beis HaMikdash. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh, he says, it is a mitzvah aseh to build the Beis HaMikdash at all times, and even when the Jewish people are in Geulah, there is still a mitzvah to build the Beis HaMikdash. The mitzvah doesn't disappear just because we're in Geulah. I mean, it's hard to say if we're in Geulah anymore, but the mitzvah applies at all times. This is clear from all of the sages that we have just quoted. Now, just to clarify another very important thing, I know many people are going to ask themselves, okay, fine. So there's a mitzvah to build the Beis HaMikdash. No problem. When Moshiach comes, we'll build the Beis HaMikdash. What's the problem? So I'm going to read some sources to you right here. The Talmud Yerushalmi, okay, the Jerusalem Talmud teaches the Beis HaMikdash is destined to be built before the establishment of the house of Beit David, the house of David, meaning that the Beis HaMikdash is destined to be built before Moshiach comes. The Vilna Gaon, he quotes, based off of a Mishnah, certainly the Beis HaMikdash will be built before Moshiach arrives. Then we have Mesechtas Megillah. Once Yerushalayim is built, then David will come, meaning Moshiach ben David will arrive after Yerushalayim is properly rebuilt. And Rashi on this Gemara states, he basically clarifies this and he says they're going to come to the Beis HaMikdash, to the temple, and when they come to the Beis HaMikdash, then they're going to seek out Moshiach ben David, meaning the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt, and then we're going to still be seeking out the Moshiach. There's a famous medrash, the Yalkut Shmoni, which states that Moshiach is going to be standing on the roof of the Beis HaMikdash, and he's going to announce, "O humble ones, the time of your redemption has arrived. If you do not believe me, come and see my light." Another, that medrash is also stating that Moshiach will be standing, Mr. Moshiach will be standing on the roof of the Beis HaMikdash, and Klal Yisrael still will not have gotten the hint. The Shla Kadosh, he writes, the Beis HaMikdash is destined to be built before the kingdom of David. Again, Beis HaMikdash will be built before the era of Mashiach. The Zohar writes that the temple, the Beis HaMikdash, comes before the Kibbutz Goliath, before the ingathering of the exiles. Then we have, this is a nice harsh one. I'll read what he wrote here. The Minchas Yehudah, written by Rav Yehudah Alkalai. He says, the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim will be built by the righteous, by the tzaddikim, before Mashiach. And one who says that the beginning of redemption will only be through Mashiach, as the ignorant, unlearned masses hope for, it is like one who says that the sun will rise before the light of the morning shines. Such words are completely null and void. They don't make any sense. And this great evil resulting from this corrupted opinion is something tangible, and experience proves it. This matter is it's a mitzvah to declare before the ignorant masses. And blessed is he who sanctifies the name of Hashem publicly. In my opinion, one who conceals this matter desecrates the name of heaven in secret. Meaning, Rabbi Yehudah Alkalai is saying that certainly Yerushalayim will be rebuilt, the Beis HaMikdash will be standing, and then Mashiach will come. And he's literally saying it's a mitzvah to teach this to the masses of Klal Yisrael who are completely ignorant in this matter. Sounds a little too familiar, unfortunately. So with all that being said, is there a mitzvah to build the Beis HaMikdash? Yes. Do we need to go onto the Har HaBayit in order to build it? Yes. Will Moshiach come and guide us as to how to build the Beis HaMikdash? According to many of these sources, no. We will have to do it. We will have to get the job done. We're going to have to figure it out. In which case, we need to go onto the Har HaBayit. We need to build the Beis HaMikdash. Hashem is waiting to see if Klal Yisrael has enough passion and urge to build a house for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As we know, David HaMelech was very uncomfortable living in a palace, knowing that the palace of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Beis HaMikdash, was not yet built. He talks about it, he cries about it, he was stressed about it. Every Jew should be stressed about the fact that we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. And whether you like it or not, we have a mitzvah to build it, and we can do so. And we can do so by going on the Har HaBayit. And the only way we can go onto the Har HaBayit is by going onto the Har HaBayit. More Jews need to go onto the Har HaBayit, and the sooner we can do that, the sooner we can move past all of the kares and the Isser and the Usser and the prohibitions, the sooner Jews get educated on this subject, the sooner we will conquer and take full control of the Har HaBayit, build the Beis HaMikdash, build the Mizbeach, reinstate hundreds of mitzvahs that we have not had the opportunity to perform in our long and difficult Geulah, our exile. And this is the place that Jews should have passion for. Not trying to forbid Jews from doing mitzvahs, not trying to forbid Jews from building the Beis HaMikdash and bringing more kiddush and holiness into this world. Jews should be fighting for what the Torah wants, for what Hashem wants, for what our Nevi'im told us, for what Chazal has told us. And so I hope that this video brought you guys some clarity on the matter. And I'm not telling you what you must do tomorrow. Just don't be ignorant. Discuss it with your Rav. Ask him questions. Challenge him. Challenge yourself. These are not halachos that were so relevant for previous generations. But this is the Torah of this generation. We need to get educated. Until we get educated, we will not have a Beis HaMikdash. And we need to have a Beis HaMikdash, because that is the will of Hashem. And the only reason we are on this world is to fulfill the word of Hashem. So please, guys, check the source sheets. I'm going to link videos in the description below. I'll put a link to my website and to the videos on my website about the Har HaBayit. Check out beishashem.org. You guys have the resources. Please get educated. You can reach out. You can email us at homeboundisrael@gmail.com. You can email Rabbi Yehudah Levi. We'll put his email in the description. And so if you like this video, check out the rest of our videos on our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, share these videos with your friends, spread the Torah. Let's make the greatest kiddush Hashem the world has ever seen. If you want to get involved in the work we are doing, there's a lot of things we're doing. Baruch Hashem. Go on our website, donate, partner with us, help us keep going, help us expand our efforts, grow our organization. We have the Geulah Center. It's up and running. Check it out on our website. You can come visit if you'd like. It's free. Reach out. Learn more about Eretz Yisrael. Learn more about Moshiach. Learn more about Geulah. Learn more about the Beis HaMikdash and so many of the mitzvos that we have not had the opportunity to perform in quite some time. And so, guys, as always, chazak ve'ematz. Be strong. Be courageous. Get educated, spread the Torah, spread the light, and never be embarrassed or uncomfortable to make the greatest kiddush Hashem the world has ever seen. Because we are living through a period of time that Jews over the last 2,000 years can only dream of. And you have the opportunity to be part of it and to facilitate the moment that we've been waiting for. Chazak ve'ematz. I will see you guys in the next one.